Hello everyone, welcome back to part 3 of the paper mache pirate skull tutorial. In the last segment we covered a lot of ground. We made an eye patch, we made some teeth. I demonstrated how to make a head wrap if you chose to do a different variation of a pirate. We did some sculpting, or laid on some clay all over our skull. And if you remember correctly, my other pirate here that I applied that cloth, just a solid piece of cloth, it wasn't big enough to wrap around the back. I just did that as a quick demonstration to show you. I ended up taking that off because I didn't like it, and I ended up putting on a much larger hat on this guy. I think he's going to be pretty cool. I still need to strip mache this, but you don't need to watch me do that. In this segment, we're going to continue sculpting. We're going to get to the hat, and then we're going to sculpt out the features in the skull itself. Before we get back at it, let's quickly go over tools and materials needed for this segment. Okay, tools and materials needed for this segment. Obviously, your pirate skull. You're going to need your paper mache, some paper mache paste, paper mache clay, and your teeth. You should have already made your teeth, whether you were going to make them out of the polymer clay, whether it's oven baked or air dry, or out of your paper mache clay. So you will need your teeth for this segment. An optional thing, you don't need these, but are some these are craft pipe cleaners and a pencil. And I'm going to show you a very simple way to adorn your pirate hat. In the last segment, I mentioned that off camera I was going to experiment with the Durham's water putty, and I did that. As you can see here, these white teeth, that's the Sculpey clay, oven baked Sculpey clay, and then these yellowish colored teeth, this is the Durham's water putty. It was interesting. This stuff dries, it dries and hardens very quickly, so you have to work very, very quickly. And the texture is a little off. You know, it's not smooth like the Sculpey, but that's fine. I mean, they make really great, like, monster teeth. Did I find it worth it? Yeah, I don't know. Probably going to stick to my Sculpey teeth, but that's what these look like. And they dry to this off yellow color, so that's kind of cool too for some monster teeth. But anyway, that's what I accomplished with the Durham's water putty. So that's going to be it for tools and materials needed. So let's get started on sculpting out this pirate hat here. All right, before we progress here on our sculptures, I want to go back to these two skulls very quickly. These ones, in comparison to this guy right here, are not... I didn't cut out the mouth. I did not insert or cut out the eyes and insert the paper cones, the newspaper cones in there. They're solid. I just sculpted right over the form without doing any of that. And that's, you know, obviously that's an option for you. You can certainly do that where you don't have to mess with any of cutting out anything. You just build out the areas with your clay. If you're going to put a big hat, on a skull, I suggest that before you sculpt out or even attach your hat, that you do sculpt out your skull first. This one obviously is all sculpted out, ready to go, clayed over, built up, all that good stuff. And you could certainly do that first before even attaching your hat. And then all you have left to do is basically work on your hat. So that is an option. It's probably the easiest way to go, instead of attaching the hat and then sculpting. But because this pirate skull here has a smaller hat, it's going to be easier to deal with. So I just wanted to point those couple of things out before we continued with the sculpt on this one. Alright, first things first here, we're going to get rid of these thin flexible strips of cardboard. We don't need those in there anymore. So I'm just cutting them out. I'm going to go ahead and start by, once again, the top of the hat here. I'm going to go ahead and start by just applying a thin layer of my paper mache clay to the entire top of the hat and inside these bends here. I'm going to do this one section at a time, applying my thin layer of clay and then going in and smoothing it over. I'm not real concerned about the edge right now. I'll get the edges of the hat when I do the front of the hat. But just one section at a time, and I want to do the bends. So after I smooth this out with my paper mache paste, and then I go in using a spoon or some other type of plastic sculpting tool, I'm going to go and I'm going to do the inside bends of the back of the hat as well. And then the last part will be the middle. And in this middle section here, where the top of the skull actually became the top of the hat, I'm going to bulk that out a little bit more so that it actually looks like there's more of a indentation of a hat sitting on top of a skull instead of it being so sort of one-dimensional. I just want to build that up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead, continue on doing this, and then we'll progress from there. So I've got the top of my pirate hat clayed over. I bulked up the middle a little bit more so it has more of a pronounced area where the hat would actually fit onto the skull. That's all wet and everything, so I'm not going to fool around too much with it. But what I'm going to do now, and like I've mentioned before, you have to do these things in sections. I'm going to go in and I'm going to start laying on clay in the front of this pirate hat, and I'm going to make sure that I get some clay all the way around these edges. I'm going to get some clay all the way down to about right here. Not going to be able to flip it over so much and do the bottom part and then let those dry. But so that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to apply, that's where these craft pipe cleaners come in. I'm going to show you how to decorate your pirate hat, if you so choose to do so, giving it a more decorative ridge. But first things first, I'm going to go ahead and apply my clay all the way to about this area. Get some clay all the way around the ridges and these areas where they're curved forward as well. So I've got those areas clayed over on all the bends here, and I put a layer of clay on the edge all the way around the hat. If I pick it up, you can see I did not go all the way around the hat on the bottom. I'm not going to get to that until after this all dries, because it's just going to be too cumbersome for me to work with. And that's a pretty good tip too, though. If you feel like you're working on something, whether it's pirate skull or a jack-o'-lantern paper mache sculpture, if it gets to the point where it becomes too cumbersome to work with while it's wet, let it dry and then pick up after it's dry and move on to a different section. I'm going to move on here, and I want to show you a really cool technique using craft pipe cleaners. And you can make a decorative border to your paper mache pirate hats. Very simply by taking a pen or a pencil and wrapping a pipe cleaner around just like that. Get it all the way around. And then you just remove it. And then you could uncoil it a bit. Get your paper mache paste. Dip your pipe cleaner into the paste. And what happens is the paper mache paste will stick to all of those little bristles on that pipe cleaner. And now what I could do is I could take this pipe cleaner and on that wet clay that I applied on there, I can press it in to that wet clay. And this will give your paper mache pirate hat a more decorative look to it. It would be really cool if you had like a nice big captain's type hat, something like that. That would look really cool. And this will just stick right on there. So that's one thing, that's one method or one use for paper mache or for these pipe cleaners here. Just press it into your clay. And you could go ahead and you could go all the way around if you wanted to on your entire pirate hat. Or you could just do, the areas that are bent, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing. And then this is going to dry really solid and secure on here. I'm going to have to play with this a little bit to make sure that it's stuck on there really well and in a place where I want it to be. But there you have it. And then also, while this is wet, if you are intending on pressing in any kind of texture or adding any other little adornments to it, whether you have sculpted those separately or not, now's the time to do that and to get those done. Press those in while your clay is wet so that it will stick in there and dry really solid into that clay. Alright, so I put that using the craft pipe cleaner technique. I've got that around just the curved edges of my pirate hat here. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry, like I said, probably 24 hours, and then I'll be able to get back to it. Alright, it's been about 24 hours or so since I applied the clay to the hat. The only part of the hat that I haven't applied any clay is the very bottom here where it kind of connects to the skull, which I'm going to get to. But I just wanted to point a couple of things out. As you can see, I was able to manipulate the front bend here so it wasn't so bent in. It's more curved forward, but not bent all the way back like it was. And the way I did that was manipulating this portion of it while the clay was still wet. And I'll show you how I did that. The other thing that I did off camera is I strip mached my other pirate hat here. I trimmed it down a little because I just felt like it was too big. So I need to get some clay on that hat. So I'll do that off camera and then show you what that looks like. But let me show you how I manipulated that. So if it occurs to you, you'll know what to do and how to handle that. So very simply, what I did to rectify the situation of this bend being too pronounced backwards, and how I straightened that out a bit. While this was wet, and you could see kind of messed up this area when I did that. Not a big deal, because I'm going to go back over with some clay and fill all that in. But what I did was I took a hot glue stick, and I braced it. And you could see where I braced it, right in that area. And I held that in place and let it dry just like that. It's not a perfect solution, but it is a solution. And you could do the same if you wanted to with any bends. This pirate hat, especially this rounder part where the clay is a little bit thicker, and in some of these areas, it's still a little wet. Not so much that I can't move forward with it, but it'll do. So what I'm gonna do off camera here, because I don't believe that you need to watch me do this, I'm gonna clay over the rest of the raw strip mache underneath this hat, where it connects to the skull, and then go over it with my paste, with my paintbrush, smooth it out a little bit more using some sort of plastic spoon or other sculpting tool, like that. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll get right back at it, and we're going to start sculpting out the skull. All right, I am ready to move on and sculpt in some details, make the skull look a little more interesting and skull-like. If you have a three-dimensional reference for a skull, such as this is just a porcelain skull, you can use that, and kind of just looking at it and seeing where we need to build up. So the cheekbone areas here, we'll build those up. Some of the jawline here, we'll build that up. Around the eye sockets, we'll build that up. And then lastly, we'll apply the teeth, and we'll build out the nose, make that more interesting as well. So if you have a reference, a three-dimensional skull reference, that'll come in handy. First thing that I like to work on is the eye sockets. So I just take a coil of my clay here, and I'm just going to build around the eye socket just to form that out a bit more. This is the eye socket that I'm going to attach my eye patch to, just because I like this eye socket better. It looks a little bit more hollow than this other one. So I'm gonna just take the time here and just layer on some clay around my eye sockets just to give them some more dimension. And I'm going to do the same with my other eye socket here. Just to build it up, give it some more dimension, make it look a little bit more hollow. Once I've done that, I'm going to go in. Once I've done that, I'm going to go in with my paintbrush with the paste, apply some paste, smooth it out, and then I'll go in with one of my plastic sculpting tools, and I'll smooth that out as well. Not really concerned about the eye socket that I'm intending to have the eye patch over, but I did make that eye patch so that I can move it from one eye socket to another. So if that's your intention, you're going to make sure that you pay the same amount of attention on each eye socket. If your intention is to be able to move your eye patch from one eye socket to another. And after I've done that, I have my little sculpting tool here, and I'm just going to go in with that and smooth it out even further using that little tool. These things come in really handy. So I'm going to use this little tool and just smooth in. I'm going to pay a good amount of attention around the areas where my my wet clay meets that dry clay. Make sure that's all smoothed in. I'm going to redefine this eye socket. I want that one to really stand out, make it more pronounced, since that's the one that's going to be showing and not covered with that eye patch. Keep in mind that when you are applying this clay over your dry clay, it's going to shrink. So if you want some areas to really stand out, you're going to need to apply thicker amounts of clay to those areas, because once they dry, they're going to shrink. Alright, so I did some redefining, and I'm going to come in again just one last time. I have a smaller paintbrush here with my paste. Now, depending on the look that you're going for, you can leave this a little rough. You know, it's a pirate skull. They've probably been roughed up. Pirates are pretty rough and tumble characters. Not without their scars. So I'm just going in just a little bit. So I kind of like that. If you could see that, it's kind of like, has like a little cracked area there. I'm going to leave that. When I paint this and dry brush it, it'll have more of a rough or injured, like this pirate had an injury to his eye at one point. Alright, I think that's good. Now I'm going to move on here. I want to build up some cheekbones. So I'm going to take, again, a bit of my clay here. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply it right over that existing cheekbone from our original armature mold. I'm going to do one on each side here. Once again, paintbrush with my paste on both sides. So I got my cheekbones built up there and smoothed out. I can, for good measure, again, go in with my little plastic sculpting tool, smooth it out a little bit more. Sort of blend those seams where the wet clay meets that dry clay, so it doesn't look like it was obviously just slapped on there. And again, if you want your cheekbones to be more pronounced, you're going to put on thicker layers of clay in those areas. All right, and then, you know, keep in mind that if you're going to press in any texture or anything like that that you want to stand out, maybe a crack or something, and it's one of the cheekbones, anything like that, now's the time to do it. while the clay is wet. Or you can leave it completely smooth. I mean, whatever you prefer. That's pretty much how that looks. That's going to give it lots of texture. So when we go to paint these and dry brush, it's really going to bring out all that texture that we put in there. I'm going to move on to the nose, and then we'll do the jawline, and we'll insert our teeth. So not too much with the nose here. Again, small coil of clay. And I'm just putting it right around that nasal cavity. So that it just appears more three-dimensional. I'll go in with my smaller paintbrush and the paste. Go in here with my little sculpting tool. Just kind of press in and define those areas a little bit more. Just around like that. Super simple. Right, I'm going to grab my teeth. Alright, so I'm using the polymer clay teeth. And because pirates probably didn't have a lot of access to really good dentistry, they probably had some really bad teeth. So the way that I created mine, I did put in some chips when the clay was still, before it was baked, when it was formed. I put in some chips there, just using a little sculpting tool. You can use a toothpick to do that. And I have my different sizes of teeth here. At this point, I don't really know like how many teeth I'm going to end up using. The mouth on this guy isn't very wide, but that's fine. So I have all these different sizes of teeth here. So what I want to do first is I'm going to go in again with my bits of clay, and right around this jawline here, I just want to build that up a little bit more. On both sides here. The bigger you want it, or the thicker you want it, the more clay you're gonna pile on here, because it will shrink. I am putting another thin layer of clay on the bottom portion of the jaw here. Reason for that is because that's where I'm going to insert or press in my teeth. Kind of looking at that, I think I need to bulk this up a little bit more on the sides here of the jawline, so that that stands out a little bit more from the rest of it, from the rest of that bottom jaw. Alright, I think I've got that bulked up enough in those areas. I do want to come in again with another thin layer of clay, and just a small coil, and right over that top lip area. Need wet clay so that I can press in again my teeth into that wet clay, and then once those teeth will adhere and dry, then they won't come out. They won't go anywhere. They'll be in there permanently. All right, before I start attaching the teeth, once again, I'm going to go in, paintbrush, paste, smooth in these areas. Really want to make sure that you're paying attention to these areas where your wet clay meets the dry clay, so you don't have an obvious seam. All right, and then again, for good measure, just going to come in and make sure that my edges or my seams are smooth enough so that they don't stand out and look like seams. I shaped my little jaw a little bit. It is all going to shrink. Now I'm ready to apply my teeth. This is a very simple technique. You could start on the bottom or the top, whichever you prefer. I take my little teeth and I simply press them in to the wet clay. You can leave gaps in between teeth, as if your pirate was missing some teeth. But really make sure, you can even overlap them a little bit, give them some crooked looking teeth, put a couple of them sideways. Whatever your heart desires. I didn't form like any molars or anything like that. They're all pretty uniform teeth. You certainly could take the time to do that. But the key to this technique is making sure that you are pressing your teeth into that wet clay. This guy's got some gnarly teeth. Put as many teeth in there, or as little amount of teeth in there as you want. Once you have your teeth in there, you're going to take your take a small paintbrush, dip it in your paste, go over those teeth in between them. So you're going to apply some paper mache paste and that will ensure that these things are really going to be locked in. But the real key is pressing them in far enough into your wet clay. If you don't have them pressed in far enough to your wet clay, they might just pop out. I think I've done a pretty good job here. Gnarly looking teeth. He's really taking shape now. He's more defined. Looks like a skull instead of a flat mold that we just slapped some clay over. You could take as much time on the sculpting process on this as you want. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to call this guy done, or the skull done. Couple other things that I do want to show you. And again, if you're wanting to put in some texture, make sure you're pressing that in to your wet clay so that it stands out when it dries. Couple other things that I do want to show you guys. You can certainly add some other things to the wet or the pirate hat at this point. Even if it is completely dry, you can go in, and if you wanted to, you can create with little bits of wet clay. If you wanted clusters, let's say you wanted clusters of barnacles on the hats, it's pretty simple to do. You know, you just take little bits of round bits of your paper mache clay, kind of apply it in clusters, sort of like that. You can do it in multiple areas. And then with your paper mache paste, go in over those. If you need a reference picture for barnacles, pull those up on your smartphone or on your computer or whatever, your tablet. Look at those. It's not rocket science, though, I'll tell you that. They're basically, you know, you just put in little ridges, define them a little bit. You have basic barnacle clusters. Of course, you're going to take more time than I'm doing. This is just, again, I'm showing you an example of some of the other things that you could apply to your hat. You could put a starfish. You can create a starfish. You could put that on the hat if you want, like a starfish is hooked to the hat or stuck to the hat, as if he's been underwater for a while. You put barnacles up on the top of your hat here, anywhere. You can even put barnacles or, you know, a starfish, or even like, you know, if you want to get real creative, you could do like a little octopus coming out of one of the eyes. You know, there's a multitude of things that you could do as far as sculpting is concerned. But that's pretty much it for this process here. I do still need to go in and repair my areas where the clay got messed up when I pushed the brim of the hat forward. But other than that, this is it. This is going to be it. So again, make sure you're going to put these things, put them in front of a fan or outside in the sun. If you live in a humid area, you're really going to want to make sure that you put it in front of a fan. It's going to help dry a lot faster, and it'll prevent mold. All right, everyone, that's a wrap for part 3, sculpting our pirate hats, our pirate skulls They're completely done. Next segment is going to be the final segment. We're going to paint these things. We're going to seal them. We'll attach our pirate patch, and these things will be good to go for your Halloween pirate display. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.